More Cowboys coverage coming your way from the NFL Combine here in Indianapolis. Tommy Yarrish alongside Nick Eatman and Patrik Walker of DallasCowboys.com. Brian Schottenheimer just wrapped up his time at the podium. First time we've spoken to Schotty since his introductory press conference. Patrik, your initial takeaways from what Brian had to say at the podium?
Well, Tommy, my biggest takeaway is just how well balanced the staff is for Schottenheimer. And he was honest in saying that that wasn't necessarily the plan going in, but it's how it worked out because he's constantly scouting for new coaching talent, reaching out to his connects. Obviously, he has a long pedigree in the NFL. So you look at the experience, especially with Matt Eberflus, his defensive side of the ball, but look at some of the talented collegiate minds like Connor Riley, who've not yet coached in the NFL. You add those things together, I think it'll work out well for him.
You mentioned the experience aspect of the staff, and when you look at this roster, too, there are experienced players with a lot of decisions coming up, and Brian Schottenheimer touched on that a little bit in terms of Zach Martin and Osa Odighizuwa. Do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, I think it was the first and the last question of the Schottenheimer interview, the first one being on Osa Odighizuwa. There's been some talk, some rumblings that maybe that's going to happen. They're going to re-sign him. If that happens, obviously that's a big piece in the middle of their defensive tackle position. So, he couldn't really speak to that so much if it does happen, but he said that would be a great addition. And so, didn't really get too much into the details. Same with Zach Martin, who we know is probably going to retire next week, officially retire, and there's going to be an event the Cowboys are going to hold about that. He said great player, better person, though, as well.
And people is what stands out to me about this Cowboys staff in terms of the people that he's brought in. It seems like everybody speaks very highly of Brian Schottenheimer and vice versa from Schottenheimer to his assistants. And the players seemingly is what they're looking for, good people and good players too. So when we talked to Will McClay earlier at the Senior Bowl and yesterday, that was one of the things that he emphasized too. They're looking at the culture aspect of how these players fit, but from a playing style standpoint, I thought it was interesting that Brian Schottenheimer talked a little bit about what he's looking for, and he talked specifically at the running back position is what he was asked about, something that the Cowboys may be in the market for in the upcoming NFL draft. Contact balance and being able to catch out of the backfield were the two things that stood out to me in terms of what to look for a running back, because when you think of Rico Dowdle, he's more of the slasher type guy who's going to cut between the tackles really well. Great vision. That was another thing that Schottenheimer said he wants to see from his running backs. But Patrik, when you think about that vision compared to what Clayton Adams has shown that he can do on the offensive line and what Connor Riley has done at Kansas State developing offensive linemen, how do you feel like the pieces of that puzzle come together?
I think when you talk about Schottenheimer, what he said, referencing it as a home run, the package of Clayton Adams and Connor Riley, I think that's the perfect description. But then you also toss in a guy like running backs coach Derek Foster, who oversaw peak Austin Eckler in Los Angeles with the Chargers, some of the best years of Alvin Kamara with the New Orleans Saints. And then you go back to Schottenheimer saying that he wants a guy who can also catch out of the backfield as well. Now you look at what Clayton Adams was able to do with the Cardinals, and then you look at Connor Riley, what he was able to do with Deuce Vaughn at Kansas State. These are similar styles and schemes that are all marrying together here in Dallas. So again, I think that it is in fact what Schottenheimer said. I think that's a home run package there.
And you're going to see a lot of really good running backs and offensive linemen here at the NFL Combine over the next couple of days, guys who can catch out of the backfield and block up front. I didn't mean to cut you off if you had something.
Well, first of all, I think can Ashton Jeanty catch the ball? Because when he said I need a running back can catch, I'm like, I wonder if he can catch. I'm sure he can.
I think Ashton Jeanty can do just about everything.
Perfect. Yes,
that's a yes.
But I forgot my favorite thing that he actually said. My favorite thing that Schottenheimer said was that Tyler Guyton has been in the weight room every single day. He's busting his ass in the weight room. I love that. That's exactly where he needs to be. I think these next few months are the most important months of the calendar year for 2025 for Tyler Guyton. Yes, the season will be great, but if he takes care of business right now in February, March, April, maybe even to May, take care of what you need to do to be a second-year NFL player, I think it'll all come into place as a player.
And one quick piggyback on that, another thing that I love that Schottenheimer said, best five up front. That's something that Cowboys fans have been begging for years, and it looks like you're going to get it. Does that mean Cooper Beebe moves from center to guard? Sounds like it's definitely a possibility because Schottenheimer has now said it, Stephen Jones said it, Connor Riley said it, Clayton Adams said it. They're looking for your best front five regardless of what the positions are going to be.
And I will add that you mentioned how Schottenheimer was asked about Cooper Beebe moving from center back to guard, where he played a majority of his career at Kansas State. He did say it was possible, but he seemed a little bit hesitant on it. He said it's hard to move a guy out. You can wait for it, but it's hard to move a guy who played as well as he did at center. But at the same time, if you've got, we've talked about this on the draft show, if you've got a third-round center versus a second- or first-round guard, that's a completely different story. You've got to put your best players in the right spot, and that feels like it's what Brian Schottenheimer is doing. Now, another emphasis has been the trenches, and we talked about the offensive line a little bit. Going back to the defensive side of the ball, another thing that I'm sure the Cowboys will have their eyes on here at the Combine is the big defensive tackles. We mentioned Oso Odigizua potentially signing an extension with the Cowboys or returning for 2025. Nick, what do you feel like is a piece that would be able to complement what Oso Odigizua does?
Well, that's a big part of it. If he does resign, then it doesn't pigeonhole you to say you've got to get one, because you really don't have a defensive tackle. You don't have a lot of help if you don't re-sign him. Even if you do, though, more guys up front. But I'm looking at somebody with a lot more size as well. I mean, I think Osa can get up the field. We'll see what Mozzie can do as well. Mozzie's kind of in between, but somebody that just plugs the holes there and can just eat up a lot of space. That's what I'm thinking that this team needs. Maybe you don't have to get that in the first round, but at some point, somebody with a lot of beef up there. That's what I'm looking for.
And it seems like that's kind of been in the past of an Aaron Whitecotton who coached defensive line for the New York Jets. He had Big Quinnen Williams there in the middle of that defensive line, and when you look at what he's got now with the Cowboys, Oso Odigizua, not necessarily the tallest guy in stature, but you've got Mozzie Smith, who has a lot of power in the middle there, and there are plenty of options in the NFL draft, like Deion Walker from Kentucky, who's just a big guy in the middle, Alfred Collins from Texas, a guy that you could certainly get to fit that mold. But a lot of good insight from Brian Schottenheimer and his staff this week as to what they're looking for and what they want to do going into the future. It'll be a couple of months until we see that get played into action, but so far the early reviews on Brian Schottenheimer and his staff coming back positive, and they all seem to be in alignment. We'll come back here in a little bit from Indianapolis. Thanks for watching our coverage from the NFL Combine, and make sure to follow along at DallasCowboys.com.